Velkommen til ny episode av podcasten Manneprat. And today we have with us Terrance Carfrae. So warmly welcome to you, Terrance.
Thank you. Super good to be here.
Mm-hmm. I think I reached out to you some time ago. We had some common friends, John from US, and some other people, and so you were interested in working, or you are working with men and doing some stuff there, and just saw you shared a lot of interesting things on social media. Uh, and yeah, here we are. I have the podcast. It's like, I think it's 60% men who is listening and also 40% women. So
Amazing.
yeah. So again, warmly welcome to you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, I was really chuffed to, as I mentioned to you earlier in our brief conversation before we went live, that to see those worlds of John McMullen and Journeys of Wisdom, that kind of very fringe group of people doing some beautiful things with regards to emotional intelligence and holistic coaching, merging with the world of men's work, which is something that we're both also interested in. And as you aptly pointed out, I don't think there's a lot of people that are merging those two particular worlds. So you and I meeting feels very serendipitous to me.
Yeah, thank you for expressing that. Yeah, it feels interesting. So maybe I can start with asking you, what brought you into the world of or interest of working with men?
Yeah, it's a really important question. For me, the reality was I grew up without much of a father figure, and I didn't have many role models when I was young. I developed a sense of this very unhealthy competition with other men. And if I saw men that were successful in the world or that had a sense of masculine presence or power, I felt very intimidated by them. I would avoid them. And I found a lot of solace in having female friends and had this very much a lone wolf attitude for myself and a lot of dedication in my life of doing it on my own. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s where I encountered the concept of men's groups. And I sat with my first men's group at that time and stayed with them for 9 years. And they were an amazing, amazing congregation of men. We had community leaders and high profile business people and people working for the government and a shaman there. And there was a whole bunch of interesting characters that we all came together. And for me, I felt really out of my depth. And through the experience of sitting with these men over this 9-year period, I think that's how I claimed my manhood and really understood myself as a man through the lens of that group. And the contrast of me looking at my life before that men's group and the product of the impact that the men's group had on me was such a stark contrast. And I realized that this was an extremely important thing to be able to share in some way with the world. And it had struck my heart as really important for sure. And so I started reorienting my coaching business, which I had been coaching for 20 years before that, and then started shifting into focusing on men, on young men that are really wanting to initiate themselves into their manhood and claim a deeper responsibility and commitment to their lives.
Really cool. Yeah. And again, thank you for sharing. What do you think, or what's your experience of what is lacking in our culture and society, like maybe in general, regards to men? You said you had an experience over many years being in that group with a lot of different men. What were some of the qualities you learned along the way in that group, for example? Yeah.
Yeah. So the two questions you asked,
Mm,
one was, what do I see as missing
mm,
uh, in the world of masculinity and manhood? And then what did I learn in particular in that group?
mm,
The first question I think merges a little bit with the second, in that one of the great things that are missing for men is a sense of brotherhood, is a means of being able to be in connection with what I've heard termed an honor group, a group of men that we travel through life with as allies in our experience, that we can check in with and have support from and get accountability and challenge from, and also gain wisdom from. And so that is one major thing that I don't think our modern world is really allowing for an ease of, which is men to uh, congregate into groups that are very supportive of each other. And also the lack of elder leadership in uh, the Western world, in contemporary Western culture. It seems like there's a division away from the uncles, the fathers, the grandfathers, the male elders of our community being able to interface with the younger generations to help guide them through their way. And these younger generations are feeling like they have to figure it out for themselves. Their fathers, their uncles, their grandfathers are absent. They're out working somewhere or away from the family unit. They're not there able to shepherd the young man or the boy through the different rites of passage, through the experiences that help them understand what it is to be a man. So I think in the most fundamental sense, that is what is missing. And what I learned through this group, to answer your second question,
mm,
um, is the importance of that. How deeply I was craving men in my life that I could trust, men that I could lean on and be supported by. Like up until that point in my life, I don't think I'd ever really been hugged by a man or held by a man when I was in pain or suffering in some way. And to feel that loving support of a group of men that were there to help lift me up, help hold me, help to, um, yeah, be with me through the challenges of my life. It's an invaluable experience. But I want to add in one other thing, because there were many, many things that I got from men's groups and I learned a bunch. But I think I can wrap up a lot of those learnings in a concept, and that is that through regular meetings with the same group of men over 9 years, I got to have a front row seat in the inner workings of 8 other men's lives. And as they went through divorce or starting a business or getting pregnant or failing to get pregnant or um, some major health crises or a death of a loved one. And I was there with them as they were navigating those experiences. And so I got this amazing window into the very intimate workings of another man's world and how he approached those challenges or celebrations in his life. And then I got to feel empathetically, would I do that the same way as him? Because that didn't seem to work out, or that seemed to work out really well for him. I'm going to emulate that. And I can't uh, um, underline just how valuable that is. I had 7 or 8 other men who were like my most intimate friends that would share every detail of what was going on in their life. And I'd be privy to that and got to enrich my own life experience through the witnessing and participating in their life experience. It was amazing.
mm. It sounds like, yeah, I think first, thank you for what you're sharing with your experience of being in that group. And it feels like, okay, so let's say men are coming to a men's group. It feels like there's some kind of an oasis for men. Like
For
an
sure.
oasis, you can just be, you can just breathe out, take off your mask, and yeah, just be yourself, be supported, support other men.
It sounds really easy, and when you word it like that, for sure, that's available. Yet the ego structures of so many men that I've met, and I lead men's groups myself, and after leaving that first men's group, I haven't gone for more than maybe 6 months without entering into another group, because it's so vital to my life. If there's not one around me that I can join, I'll start one, because I need to have that community of men around me. But to say something like for men to drop their mask, it could take years for men to lower the various levels of masking and facading that they have done. And something that I feel like is really important to understand is that the strength of the container of a men's group really then leads to the sense of safety for men to drop their mask. Just by going into a men's group is not automatically a place where men can feel really safe and held and available for their vulnerability. For me, it took several years for me to trust the group enough. And so I have dedicated my men's group experiences now, when I lead men's groups, into really creating a strong container, a container that is so robust that the men that are in it have such a sense of trust in it that they're like, I know that this is going to be kept confidential. I know that these men are here to support me. I know that these men are going to call me out on my bullshit and bring me into a deeper level of authenticity here. I know they're not going to accept this half-assed version of my story. They're going to want the real grit of what's going on. And that takes a lot of skill to be able to create a container like that. And so, yeah, men's group, they are an oasis for men. And we need to make sure the oasis has clean, beautiful water for us to be able to drink from. And to me, that's really the establishment of a really robust container.
Important words. We talked a little bit about what brought you into engaging in men's groups. Would you like to share what is your view about masculinity? I mean, there's been a lot of writings about healthy masculinity, toxic masculinity, all those kind of stuff. But what is actually masculinity, if I may ask?
Yeah, I take a big breath here to prepare myself. The answer is vast. It's one of the fundamental energies of existence to me, in the idea of existence. We had to create this duality, self and upper, up and down, black and white, this sense of contrast. And so masculinity to me in its purest form is this primal force of the universe. It's identifying the yang energy in the yin yang balance. And so the yang energy is about form, it's about structure, it's the ground of being from which all things arise. It's pure consciousness, awareness. And to me, when we see that concept that's then embodied in a human being, which both women and men have an inherent core of masculinity, it's not like only men have access to this energy. Everything in existence is running this masculine energy. But when we identify it as a trait of men, then it gets a little bit more nuanced, and we have to understand what we mean by it. So if we take that concept of this existential energy of masculinity, form and structure, in a man, that is then creating the form and structure for the relational field to move within. And so traditionally, a masculine man would be someone who has a strong body, an upright posture. He has clear presence. He is unimpacted by the emotional tumult that's happening around him, and he's able to stay centered, able to act in really clean, decisive ways, able to lead well, able to appreciate and empathize with compassion. And he's also a master of mind and thought and projection into the future, and being able to draw upon the past for experience. And I think one of the ways that we can really assess masculine energy in human beings, in men, is through Carl Jung's work of the masculine archetypes: the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. They're beautiful, rounded, cardinal look at the dimensions of manhood and masculinity. And so something I will track back on that you mentioned, this idea of toxic masculinity. I would love for that phrase to just be eliminated from our language. I think it doesn't really serve anyone in any way other than to belittle or reduce certain attributes of men. Now, there are shadow aspects of masculinity. There are dark aspects of masculinity. There's light aspects of masculinity. And toxic, I would say that the only thing that could be toxic about masculinity is when a shadowy masculine energy is being left unchecked in the world. But I'd have to go into a longer discourse about the difference between the light, the dark, and the shadows to really reveal that. But I don't think toxic masculinity as a concept is really helping us further the cause of creating harmony and connections between the genders and with life on Earth.
Great share. I also, what you're describing with the four archetypes, the king warrior stuff, and you shared some other stuff on masculinity, and I've seen you written about victimhood, victim mentality, those kind of things. Where does victim mentality comes into all of this?
So victim mentality isn't something that's exclusive to masculinity or femininity. I think it's just related to the nature of an ego. There's this concept called the drama triangle, where you have the victim, the villain, and the hero. Different versions of these. But victim energy is, to me, someone who has abdicated responsibility for their experience. Someone who has decided, rather than to accept responsibility for their experience of life, they have pointed a finger externally from them and saying, this is because of this other thing. I didn't have power or agency here. I was a victim to this external force in my life. And, you know, there's certainly solid arguments that can be made in circumstances to say, sure, you're a victim to this. You know, a car driving down the street hit you on the sidewalk and you couldn't get out of the way in time. You're a victim to that accident. And there's also another argument that really could be made to say that we are much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for, and that we are, in fact, creating our experience moment to moment in life as a divine manifestation of source energy. And there is nothing that happens in our experience that isn't under our creative control. It may not be consciously, may be unconsciously, it may be from the superconscious. But for me, inviting men especially into the claiming of as much responsibility as they can in their life, and allowing for the disempowerment of the victim mentality to be dropped and understood that it is a means of limiting our sense of greatness. I think it's a wonderful approach, and I definitely do encourage that in the men that I coach.
We are more powerful than we think we are. I love that phrase.
For sure. It's a indisputable fact to me.
Hmm. I was just looking at your page, Facebook page. I see that you have an event in Argentina
Yeah,
coming up, the initiation journey.
right. Yeah. Amazing.
Uh, yeah,
Amazing
what is
body of
that?
work.
What is going on there?
I like your excitement about it. It's one of the more incredible experiences that I have been able to be part of in my life. I've attended many different retreats and experiences, having been in the health and wellness field since my early 20s
Hmm.
professionally, and participated in many different retreats. This one stands out as one of the best retreat experiences that I ever participated in. I loved it so much that I then became a facilitator of it. And so in Argentina, I'll be co-facilitating this experience with Aaron Kleineman, a dear brother of mine. And it is truly an initiation experience for men, an opportunity for men to come into a group and to go through some experiences that help them to encounter facets of their inner world that they would not normally be able to encounter, and to very gracefully move through these inner blocks and fears that they have to be able to step into a version of themselves that they've probably been craving for a very long time. The experience itself, I think, is 7 days long, and we
Okay,
dive deep
wow.
into the world of the dark masculine and vulnerability, the idea of power, conflict, confrontation, looking at different aspects of tantra in the sense of not the sexual sense of it so much as the merging of the inner masculine and feminine within ourselves to be able to become more integrated whole beings. And the wisdom that has been brought into this, the lineage is through my friend Aaron and his teacher before him, Barry Long, and I'll be bringing in my flavors of it through men's work and journeys of wisdom work. We will be exploring what it is to be a man, what it is to be powerful and vulnerable at the same time.
Hmm.
It's really exciting. I highly recommend anyone that's curious about doing a initiation styled retreat for themselves to consider this. It's next level for sure. And yeah, the setting is amazing. I haven't been yet to Argentina or Patagonia, and this is very exciting for me to be able to go here and teach.
Yeah, it looks really interesting, and yeah, maybe we can bring a group from Scandinavia over at some point.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, this
Or
is
at
being
some
taught
good
around the
good
world too.
steak
So if
in
you
Argentina.
are not able to make this one, you can check out my page and find out more information about where they're being held. I think there'll be also one in Bali, where I'm currently residing. We'll be teaching there in April next year.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because you live in Bali right now, or?
I do, yeah. Living in
Hmm.
Bali for the last nearly 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, wow. Hmm. Cool, cool. Yeah, I mean it's been really cool so far to have you on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. I would also like to ask you if there's someone who is listening to this podcast right now who are interested in developing his own masculinity in some ways, are stuck, are lost, wanting to gain more self-confidence and direction, something in that street. What is something that you would say to him?
It's a beautiful question. First off, I would just want to acknowledge there are many men that are listening to this to know that it's not hopeless, that there is a way for you to find purpose and direction and clarity in your life. And it probably won't come in the way of a big aha realization drop moment where you're like, oh my God, this is my purpose. I suddenly know exactly what I'm going to do. But the experience of stepping deeper into manhood is it's a process, and it requires discipline, it requires commitment, and it requires support. So if you listening to this have a desire to find your purpose, find your passion, claim it in the world, to attract in a woman that is worthy of you and that you are worthy of her, to find the sense of confidence and capacity to be with life's challenges in a graceful, beautiful, strong way. It's all possible. And really, you just have to make the choice to step onto that path. For a lot of men, I would say one of the first stages that would need to happen is some form of a rite of passage for you. And it could show up in many different ways. You may create it yourself. You may create it as part of a community or a men's group. But to initiate yourself onto the path of self-responsibility, to stake a claim in your life and say, hey, I'm gonna show up for myself. And that rite of passage is really missing in our culture, and to find a way to have that happen for yourself so that you know that you're stepping out of the old version of yourself into the version of yourself that you're going to grow ever deeper into. And then set on the path, set on the journey into crafting yourself into the man you want to become. It is a step-by-step journey which you get to practice every day of your life. No shortcuts, and I don't believe you'd want one even if there was. And every subsequent step becomes sweeter and sweeter as you realize the world becomes more and more beautiful and working in your favor rather than the idea of it working against you. So my
How
words,
can
short man, would be, you got this.
powerful? I was just curious, how can if you are creating a rite of passage for yourself, for example, how can you do that? What kind of how can you set up that, or what kind of experience can it be?
So there are many, many different types of rites of passage. They can be done through fasting. It could be some form of physical exertion. Maybe you choose to run a marathon for yourself and dedicate yourself to it. There are aspects of rite of passage that are important. One is there's no guarantee of success. That is something that you're capable of doing, but it's going to test you mentally, emotionally, and maybe spiritually. It may be something like a lot of people using plant medicines now as a form of rite of passage. Generally speaking, you want to go through an experience of preparing yourself to know what you are wanting to move into and what you are wanting to leave behind. To go through the crucible, the test, the challenge that you have for yourself. And then on the other side of it, to be welcomed as the new man into your circle of influence. So if you have a support group, even if it's your family or a couple of close friends, to have them acknowledge that now there's something fundamentally different about you because you have undertaken this quest and you have succeeded. And if you fail, that's okay. Then you get an opportunity to go back, redesign it, and have another go. Yeah, it's a process, and I've actually developed a program, a 6-week program, where I take men through the process of understanding what their specific rite of passage is for them. And together we get to create it and help them execute it, and then set up the scene for them to initiate themselves and ideally create a community around them that is going to welcome them as a new man.
Cool. That's super cool.
It is. It's really important.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, really important.
So men need challenge.
Don't you?
I need challenge. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, me too.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing about that, Terrance. And as we are coming to an end, I just want to thank you again for attending and spending some time with me here. And yeah, my gut feeling tells me that you will be back on this podcast sometime in the future. So big thank you.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be with you. It's lovely to meet you and to find a kindred spirit in the world that has also found this beautiful thing of men's work and uh, emotional vulnerability and authenticity, which I get the impression you're dedicated to. So thank you for inviting me on, and I look forward to another opportunity to be with you.
Yeah, you will be invited, and I will put the link to your website in the podcast description so people can have a look.
That'd be great.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Thank you, Frederick.